If you ask yourself, why am I here? What is my purpose? How can I fulfill my potential? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Lifestyle, Relationships, and Career Human Design Podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa Naja from vanessanaja.com. My mission is to help you be on purpose and fulfill your potential by aligning in body, mind, and spirit so you can feel empowered, joyful, connected, and free. I'm so excited to share with you how to do that through human design. If it feels aligned, I'd love it if you subscribe and share. Now let's get to the episode. It's always a good idea to have your human design chart with you when listening. You can get yours for free at my website, vanessanaja.com/free chart. Link is in the show notes. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 21, where we will be talking about the Spleen Center in human design. And the Spleen Center is an awareness center. We have 3 of them. And we talked about the first one 2 weeks ago, the Ajna Center. And the Ajna is responsible for mental awareness. The spleen is responsible for physical awareness, instinctual awareness, what you need in order to be safe and healthy. And the emotional solar plexus, which we will talk about in the future, is about emotional and spiritual awareness. So we have those 3 awareness centers. And the spleen is very much in BG5. The spleen center is called the survival instinct. And BG5 is the business application of human design. And it governs your instincts, your intuition. It lets you know, it gives you that awareness of what is and is not good and healthy for you. It keeps you safe in the moment. And it is this moment to moment awareness. It's like a radar dish that's kind of scanning the environment to let you know if something is safe or is not safe, to let you know what is and isn't healthy for you. And depending on how the center is configured for you, it is going to operate in different ways. So remember that when a center is defined, that means it is colored in your chart. And if you're looking at your chart, the spleen is the triangle on the left side of the chart that is pointing right. So if that is colored in for you, it is defined. And if it is white, it is undefined. And neither one is good or bad. They are just different. And if your spleen is defined, that means this center, the energy of the center, your instincts, your intuition, your awareness of what is good and healthy and right for you is going to show up for you in a very consistent way. It will, however, be a little bit more limited versus somebody who has an undefined spleen, where this information, this awareness, this instinct and intuition is not always going to show up in a consistent and reliable way. However, somebody with an undefined spleen gets to have all of the experiences of how the center can operate, and over time, they're designed to become very wise about it. So, again, this is an awareness function. It does help shape how you see and experience the world. And it is also a place where the spleen specifically, where some of our existential fears reside. And I'll talk a little bit about that later in the episode. So if your spleen is defined, you are going to have consistent, reliable access to your instinct and your intuition. And it's going to show up for you in the same way pretty much every time. And this is going to depend on how your spleen is configured. So you might experience your intuition as something that you hear, maybe a frequency that you hear. You may feel it in your body in a very specific way. You might be somebody that can smell out what is and isn't good for you, who is and isn't good for you. But there's a lot, basically the spleen shows up for you through your senses. And it speaks in the moment. And it's not necessarily very loud, except for if a tiger is chasing you, in which case the spleen is in charge of you just running. There's no thought that goes into it. It's immediate. You just run. And this goes for everybody, whether your spleen is defined or undefined. Like I said, when it's defined, it's always going to show up in a very consistent and specific way. And you want to get in touch with what that experience is like for you. The thing with our intuition and our instincts is that they can be a quiet voice that only speaks once in the now, in the moment. And if you're not attuned to that, you might miss what it is telling you. So like everything, this shows up on a continuum from a low expression to a high expression. And if you have a defined spleen in the high expression, you are very comfortable with your instincts and your intuition. You're able to know what that is telling you. You follow it, you observe it, you honor it. In its high expression, you also might be a safe haven for others. So people that have this undefined will feel very safe in the aura of somebody with a defined spleen that is operating in its healthy expression. Now, as I said, our fears, our survival fears, also live in the spleen. And if you have it defined, depending on how you have it defined, these fears would show up for you in a very specific way. And the fears of the spleen are the fear of inadequacy, the fear of the future or the unknown, the fear of the past repeating itself or your old baggage catching up with you, the fear of responsibility. It can also show up as taking on too much responsibility and then being overwhelmed, the fear of failure, the fear of death or purposelessness, and the fear of imperfection. Now, the thing with these fears is they can be healthy fears. However, if your authority is telling you to go ahead and do something and you let these fears hold you back, then that would be the low expression. And the thing with the fears of the spleen, we all experience them in some way, shape, or form. It's going to be more consistent for you if you have the center defined, depending on how the center is defined. And learning to feel that fear. If you're in a situation where you're not actually in physical danger, learning to feel the fear and do it anyway is actually how you move past the fear. So one example is public speaking. The fear of death might crop up. You might feel like, oh my God, I am going to die if I do this. And the truth is that's actually an irrational fear. You are not going to die from public speaking, even if it feels that way. So you want to just recognize, acknowledge that fear, and then go ahead and do what you were going to do anyway. Do the public speaking anyway. That is how eventually you will move past that fear and it will no longer show up in an irrational way. So again, this is for the defined spleen. If your spleen is undefined, that means you are going to be experiencing your spleen in an inconsistent way based on other people around you, based on planetary transits. You are taking in energy from outside of yourself in your spleen, and that is how you experience it. And when it comes to fears, you can actually very much magnify other people's fears in this center. So it's just something to be aware of if you're starting to notice a big fear coming up. Are you taking this on for somebody else? Or are you in an environment where your spleen is connected to somebody's defined spleen and this is one of the low expressions for you? So again, when it comes to fears, really recognizing like, is this actually going to kill me? Is my health at stake? Is it at risk? And if not, then this is a fear that it's important to move beyond and move past. Um, again, with an undefined spleen, your intuition is not going to show up for you in a super consistent way. You do have the opportunity to become very wise about this energy, though, because you have an unlimited way of experiencing instincts and intuition. And over time, you get to become very wise about how you experience this. So anytime you're undefined in a center or a gate or a channel, it's an opportunity for great wisdom in that gate, channel, or center. So, about 55% of the population has defined spleen. And the spleen center is also a possible authority center for you. So remember, authorities are the ways that you make your unique decisions in life. And if you have a defined spleen, it's either going to be your authority, meaning you can just make these in the moment, instinctive decisions on anything in life, big things, little things, all things. You may have a defined spleen and have other centers defined that are your authority. For example, if you have a defined solar plexus, which we'll be talking about in the future, that is the left-facing triangle on the right side of the chart, that's always going to be your authority. It means you actually need to make decisions over time and come to emotional clarity. However, your defined spleen will influence that a little bit, but still, it's important if your spleen is not your authority to always listen to your authority when making decisions. However, little things, in the moment things, like, is this the right supplement for me? Or is this the healthiest thing for me to eat, your spleen can absolutely help you with that, regardless if it is your authority or not. With the undefined spleen, again, it can show up in a low expression to a high expression. In the low expression, the undefined spleen can be afraid of letting go. It might hold on to things that doesn't serve it for longer than necessary. And this goes for things like jobs, relationships, people, things that aren't good for you, but you're afraid to let go of. So it's a good thing to ask yourself with an undefined spleen, where are you holding on in a way that is not good for you? This can also show up as, hoarding is maybe an over exaggeration, but just holding on to all kinds of things that you are afraid to let go of in case you might need them in the future. So these are things to look at. You might also feel more insecure and afraid than somebody with a defined spleen. You might worry a lot about your survival. And again, taking in and amplifying the fears of those around you. So just being aware of that. You do have so much potential for wisdom in your undefined spleen. And you have an ability to learn to really confront and handle fears in a healthy way because you've experienced them, you've gone through them, you've had all the different experiences, the fears that are available in your undefined spleen. And generally speaking, depending on what your authority is, it's not a great decision to just make spontaneous decisions if your spleen is undefined because it's not always completely reliable. In the healthy state, you're also able to recognize what fears you're taking on from other people and what fears are actually your own. And you are able to sense what is and isn't good for you, and you can let go of the things that are not healthy for you. One of the things that can happen with an undefined spleen is it might be harder to quit things that are not good for you, like quitting smoking or, it's this holding on to things that aren't good for you, quitting relationships that aren't serving you. So becoming really aware of that and really looking at your life as like, are these things serving me? And then really actually listening to your authority, your unique decision-making strategy on what it is time to let go of that is no longer healthy for you. Another thing that can show up in the spleen center is timing. So people that have a defined spleen tend to have a more consistent experience of time. So if your spleen is defined, you might really know, okay, you know, you might be being punctual, being on time might be easier for you. And you also might be better at knowing how long something will take you. When somebody has an undefined spleen, it's not uncommon that they struggle with punctuality. So they might be late all the time, or they might be so obsessed with not being late that they're super early and it's just a lot of pressure for them. And also, if your spleen is undefined, you might notice that you underestimate how long something will take you. So just noting how you're experiencing time and starting to, if you think, for example, I know somebody that has an undefined spleen, and when they think something is going to take 15 minutes, it generally takes at least 45. So they are learning to just multiply the estimated time by 3, and this actually helps them with their sense of timing. So that is it for the Spleen Center today. Thank you so much for listening. And if you want to know more about your spleen, I invite you to check out your Deep Dive Human Design Report, which goes into the spleen in more detail and how it is configured in your chart, along with the rest of your chart. And I will leave a link for that in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening and have a beautiful day. That's it for today's episode. I know your time is important, and I'm so grateful you chose to spend it with me. It would mean the world to me if you engage with the episode by liking, subscribing, commenting, and letting me know any questions you have or what else you'd like to learn about. And the absolute best compliment is if you share with someone you think will benefit. It really helps me spread the message. Love and blessings to you.